Welcome back to Python MC. Let's break some variables. So in this case, we're going to show you all the different ways you can break global variables in Python. So we have our candy count function where our global variable candy count, I should say, and our function called take candy. Our intention is to reduce the number of pieces, in other words, the value of candy count, by using that global keyword candy count. So this is just a function where we have a single parameter, pieces, and when we call it with an argument, let's say 3, and it should reduce candy count from 200 and reduce it by the number of pieces, which is 3, so it should equal 197. All right, so let's go ahead and try this out. We're going to, now it's going to take candy count, it's going to reduce it by number of pieces, and it's going to print the total candy inside the function, the total candy outside the function. So it'll equal 197, so it works. Now, how can we break this, or how can we get some unexpected behaviors? Okay, so let's see. The first thing we'll do, what if we just get rid of this global candy count statement? Let's see what happens. So you try to reduce candy count by 3 in this case, but then it doesn't know what candy count is. You've called it before. You've basically, had this local variable candy count that you're referencing inside the function because you're trying to change it without using the global keyword. So even that should be a global variable. You need the global keyword to change the value. Because you eliminated the code on line 7, it now doesn't know how to access that global variable. So you got to drop that code back in to say global candy count. That's saying I can both read it and update it. Okay, and now that should work perfectly fine. Okay, so let's see. How else can we break it? Let's assign it a value. Global candy count equals 121. But it doesn't know what you're talking about. You get an in syntax error. Like you can't assign a value to candy count using the global keyword like that. It's the global keyword just it's declaring that I want to access and update the candy count variable from inside this function. Okay. Now let's see. We're just going to eliminate the global keyword. Let's go ahead and let's assign it a value. Again, 121. That's now a local variable. So you have these two variables called candy count. One's outside the function, one is inside the function, and Python gets a little bit confused and it basically says, okay, there's a variable called candy count inside the function. I'll reduce that by 3, but I also have this one outside the function that's 200. So basically it's this different variables, just they happen to have the same name, candy count. So we're going to change the code. Go ahead and call it with global candy count. And that should work perfectly fine. Okay. So we just sort of reverted back to original code. So we have candy count is now referring to the candy count on line 2. All right. What if we said, okay, we're going to go back here and candy count equals 121. What if we go ahead and we could just change that to X? And you can see what we're trying to say here. Basically, if this local variable, it just gets confusing because we called it candy count before. If we called it X, you'd realize it's actually 2 totally different variables. It gets confusing because sometimes people refer to a global variable and a local variable with the same name. And this creates all sorts of problems in code. So you got to be really careful when you use global variables. Now, what if we pass candy count as set up a parameter in the function to pass that as an argument? So basically when we call it, we're passing it the value 200. What happens? Well, it runs, but now this candy count becomes a local variable. You're not changing the value of candy count on line 2. You're changing the local variable candy count. And so, again, you've just basically have this candy count is the same name for really what are 2 different variables, okay? The global variable on line 2 is not the same as the variable on line 8. It's not the same as the one that you pass to it when you call this function. So if you try to pass a global variable as an argument to a function, you're basically creating a local variable. Just it happens to have the same value and the same name. Okay, so we reverted back to our original code. It's working. We've broken it a bunch of different ways. We'll see you again on Python MC.